And we're back with another episode of Career Day coming at you. This episode is brought to you by Logitech HD 920 webcams, which Lawley and I are both using. Shout out.
Shout out. Good
um,
product.
I wonder, that would be a good sponsor to get, don't you think? Like
That'd
how
be
crisp this video is.
that'd be a good one. Logitech it's a huge company.
Well, you would know. So this the topic. Adam Lawley is our guest for today. I was going to say you majored in marketing, but I'll let you kind of introduce yourself. What's your profession? What's your career? What's your title?
I actually majored in psych.
Yeah. Oh,
You
right,
know?
right. But you work in marketing.
Mhm. So yeah, my title is I'm an SEO specialist, and
SEO. That's search
yes,
engine optimization.
that is correct, Daniel. And yeah, SEO is basically working with search engines, Google, Bing, Yahoo, to make your website appear in the right places and rank highly. So
Mm-hmm.
on the first page, essentially, ideally in the first three results.
How long have you been doing this?
I got into it right out of college when I started as a marketing intern for a small company. And I can talk about how I transitioned into that, like how I got to where we're at now. I think that's probably a pretty solid place to
Sure.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, when we take a trip down memory lane into college, where you majored in psychology, I remember
Yeah.
even back in high school, you were talking about you had an interest in what's it called? What's the branch of psychology like?
Industrial organizational.
Yeah, so like
Yeah.
using psychology to like improve workplace and business practices, right?
Totally, man. Yeah, that's a great memory. Yeah, I was super into psych. Like I just love the idea of studying people's mind and behavior. I think, yeah, whatever. So that was just kind of where I was at. I went to college totally with that in mind,
Hmm.
but never really was interested in clinical. Never really wanted to be like a therapist or a counselor. Just didn't
Hmm.
think that was for me. And honestly, I was kind of drawn to IO Psych for the dollar signs. I knew
Yeah.
that it was the second highest sort of paid thing that I knew about behind like
Hmm.
a clinical psychologist. So I was
Well,
like,
a
oh,
psychology major is kind of notoriously like a money pit, right? Where if you just get a bachelor's in general psychology, they say it's like one of the
yeah,
more worthless degrees, right?
right. It's always like either that or like sociology that people like make fun of. It's like, oh, you
Right.
paid 200 grand to get a soc degree or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's only because like a lot of companies don't want to hire somebody with just a bachelor's in psych, right? You have to have some sort of graduate degree, or if you specialize in like clinical, well, even in clinical, you have to be like licensed, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah. If you really want to do something in terms of counseling, you're generally going to have to get a master's
Hmm.
in order to practice in your state
Right.
to become like a licensed mental healthcare worker or a licensed social worker.
Yeah,
Um,
licensed clinical social worker, right? LCSW.
yeah, that's right. And yeah, you'd have to go to a master's program and pass the certification.
Hmm.
Uh,
So if
and
anybody's interested in being a counselor, that's kind of the track that they would have to take, right?
that's the fastest track generally. You can work for not for profits with a bachelor's and sort of finagle your way
Hmm.
into more
That's true.
like you could work at like a state level, like you could be like a
Yeah.
benefit specialist or something like that.
There's
uh
also like case managers. So like I used
Totally.
to do a lot of volunteer stuff with homeless people and like homeless shelters or not for, nonprofits that work with them. A lot of times have case managers, which they want somebody with a bachelor's, but you don't have to be licensed or anything. So that's like another route where you're not like a therapist where you sit down and have therapy sessions, but you're definitely like working with people and helping them figure their life out. So that is an
Totally.
option for people who like helping. And if they have a bachelor's, or even if you don't, even if you just have like a high school diploma, sometimes you can be a caseworker. Um, yeah.
Totally. That's a good way to put it. Like you'd be affecting people's lives. You're helping them get on possibly like social security benefits and like
Hmm.
SSIs and things like that. But
Yeah.
um yeah, true therapy, true counseling, in a clinical setting, you would need at least a master's, and,
Mm.
and there's also the PhD or the
Or
PsyD.
yeah, that's actually what my friend Jesus is trying to do. Like in a year, probably he wants to do a PhD and become like a licensed therapist that way.
So like a true clinical psychologist.
Yeah.
It's tough road. I mean, like a clinical psychologist goes through the rigors of academia similar to other paths, whereas a
Mm-hmm.
PsyD, SPSYD, is a specialized psychology degree
Mm-hmm.
that's not highly as reputable, but it is less research focused and more
Yeah, I
clinical
think
focused.
it's like 100% clinical focused, right? Whereas a PhD, you are doing research and clinical practice. So it's like you probably have to write a dissertation
Yes.
about like, some theory based on your clinical practice. And I think that's what, Jesus likes about the program. He likes the research component too. But anyway, we're talking about you today. And so you went
Talk
to
about me,
school
baby.
for psychology. So could we got time, talk a little bit about your undergraduate experience with psychology?
Um, I was pretty disappointed with it, to be totally honest.
Oof.
When I got into psychology, a lot of the coursework was a lot of very, like, I think there's a term for it, it's like flush sort of information and knowledge, where it's like
Hmm.
very just textbook. You read the textbook,
Mm.
you're
It's like
lectured
kind of
on it.
shallow, felt right.
Yes, totally, totally. And like the more interesting courses in psych were, research, like it was like research methods and
Mm.
psychological statistics, and like
Mm-hmm.
the senior capstone that you had to do, like those were
Yeah.
far more interesting than like sort of just the basic. I mean, it's like high school in a way. It's like you show up,
Yeah.
you're lectured on a particular topic. And psychology is also like a lot of it is not particularly difficult to understand. I mean, it's just
Mm-hmm.
really exposure to it. Like
Right.
you just need to know like the terminology and sort of like the
Right.
history of how things came to be. But I
Yeah.
mean,
I think the
so that's why I
history,
like,
I think there's a lot more history that should be taught in psych classes. Um, Personally, because
yeah.
like the only like I didn't take intro psych, I took AP psych at Holy Cross, and like I just remember the
Mhm.
textbook, like you said, it seemed very superficial, where it was kind of like a lot of vocabulary and stuff, and I felt like they could
Yeah.
have gone deeper into the history of the theories, because like psychology, as you like to say, is a new science, and so it's not like biology where there's like mountains and mountains of facts that have already been established. I feel like
Right.
psychology is much more like we've established some things, but a lot of the stuff is like we're still working on it.
Yeah.
So it's like in a psychology textbook, there's not going to be as many like hard facts, but you could still learn a lot about like the history of the discipline, I guess. And like you said, the research methods, which actually was like my one of my favorite classes in college was research design and analysis in psychology.
Cool. Yeah. That was one of my favorites as well. Hi, Kitty.
This is a L. She literally just
What a
like
beauty.
jumped on me and almost knocked me over. Her.
Um, yeah, totally. I was, and I think part of that is also sort of a Keene State thing. I mean, not I sort of experienced that with kind of a lot of the courses going from Holy Cross to
Mm-hmm.
Keene State. So for people that don't know me, like I went to a private Catholic high school, like
Mm-hmm.
a pretty well reputable high school, to a state school in New Hampshire, and I did sort of I felt a drop off in like the quality of education for sure.
Interesting.
Um, but you know that was a cost decision. That was you know, that was a decision to kind of just go to the school, like that particular area. So whatever.
So yeah, what else about your psych degree? Like, what are some things that you did? What did you really like? And is there anything else that you learned as an undergrad that you thought was really useful?
I'm gonna be dead honest with you. No, not really. Like I'm very disappointed looking back. As time has gone on further, as I've gotten further and further away from my college experience, I've become more disgruntled with
Mm,
that entire process and just the the chase of the degree itself. And
Mm.
like, it should be known, like, I was like that dude in the psych department at Keene State in the time that I was there. I
What do you
won
mean?
awards.
Oh,
I won the Homer Stavely Award, which was like, it was presented to the top psychology student in
gotcha.
the grade each year. And so like,
Nice.
I out of like hundreds of kids, like that's what I got. So I was very involved. Like I was the president of the honor society. I was in
Oh,
the honors
nice.
program. I was super into it. I was into it as much as you could be.
Yeah.
And I still felt like, again, this might be a Keene State thing, but I felt like what I did learn was honestly just like how to kind of navigate the world of academia
Yeah.
rather than sort of, dude, I couldn't tell you a lot of things I learned in psych. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
the most stuff that I did learn was practical and inapplicable, like statistics. Like
Right.
that's what I learned the most.
Yeah.
And
I
everything
feel
else to
that.
me was sort of just flushed out, man, because it's not particularly useful information. I mean, it's good to be exposed to sort of like, this is what schizophrenia is. This is sort of the
Right.
kind of diagnosis. These are the types of, and I think it humanizes a lot of those elements, which I'm all
Mm.
for. There's tons of stigma in mental health. So, but you're already sort of inclined in that way anyway. Like,
Yeah.
I was already a huge proponent of mental health and counseling. So
Mm.
honestly, man, like
Yeah.
it was it's an expensive endeavor. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's really where a lot of my disgruntlement comes from, it is that it
You had
is
to
so
pay.
expensive. Yeah. And you don't have to, but that's again, like I didn't go the traditional clinical route. If I did go clinical, I may have gotten more out of it and I may have
Yeah.
been more satisfied with my experience. Uh,
Yeah. I feel a bit similarly, to be honest. I mean, I majored in neuroscience, but that was basically like kind of a term where you could take it more psychology or more biology. So I kind of did more psychology and had like a psychology. My mentor was in the psych department, and I got a psych department award for my senior thesis as well.
mm,
Um, but you did research, right? Can you talk about your research experience? And then after that, we'll move on to like actual professional stuff.
yeah, for sure. So when I was there, my senior thesis, I decided to do how how motivational cues will affect working memory. So basically, my
Mm,
idea was, is being praised or things being framed in a certain way, does that affect how well you'll do at something?
mm-hmm.
And I think that's just kind of, I'm interested in cognition. I think it's interesting to know, like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm also interested in improving cognition. Like, what is it? What are the certain circumstances or like environmental things that make people think better?
Mm-hmm.
So things like room temperature, for
Yeah.
example. But
Or like sunlight, perhaps, right? Maybe
yeah,
you have
sure.
natural light and stuff like that.
So like taking the like if you were to take a group of students that are taking an English exam
Mm-hmm.
and they're, let's say, equally skilled, but one is in a low lit room versus high, like that's I'm more interested in that type of, that
Mm-hmm.
type of cognition. So I set up an experiment where there were 5 groups and each group was given certain motivational cues to complete this sort of word game task. It was
Was it like
basically
a
like,
word search?
it was like 16 letters would appear on the screen,
Yeah.
and you would have to create words out of the letters.
Oh, the anagrams task, right?
Yeah, and it would flash multiple sets of letters. You'd only have 30 seconds per set,
Mm-hmm.
and
Now, is
throughout
this
the,
is this a task that you kind of took from the literature as like a standard validated test, or did you make it up yourself?
I think it was a mixture. I don't quite remember where I pulled it from, but I
Yeah.
do remember creating it myself in the program. So like I did have
Yeah.
to sort of set it up, but
Did you
I
use
think it was well established. Like
did you
within,
use ePrime as a
I don't
program,
remember.
or
I
maybe
don't
R, not R, I forget. Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean
remember what it was called.
this is just fun. It's reminding of like my own experience. I think like doing psychology research is pretty fun, right? Because you get to actually like design the experiment, and
It is. It's tight. Like
it's a cool hypothesis. Yeah.
yeah, and that was the coolest thing. I was like, I was going classroom to classroom in the
Yeah.
middle of the day, on campus, literally like rating classes and being like, hey, I have to stand in
Yeah.
front of 70 kids and be like, hey, I'm doing
Yeah.
this like
Oh,
experiment.
that's how you
You know,
recruited subjects?
that was a majority of it, yeah. And I
We
mean,
had like
plus
an
I knew,
online recruitment thing where like students would get like emails, and like once you sign up, like you can just do them for pay whenever you want to, kind of like a gig economy.
sure, and that was the poll, was that you would potentially win a $50 Visa gift card or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so th- so throughout the test, as you did it, you would get certain motivational cues that would be framed in a particular way. It would be like, I can't quite remember it, but it was like positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. And there was also another variable. It was like restrictive versus,
Punishment.
yeah. So it's similar to that. It's fine. I don't
Mm.
remember my own experiment, but that was sort of it. There was 5 different versions. And
Hmm.
so the idea was that if you had a negative sort of position or motivational cue throughout, that's like, hey, you don't want to do as bad as everyone else. Like you want to do better. Like
Got it.
don't screw up here. Like
It's
versus,
framed in what not to do instead of what to do.
yeah, it's in like where the positive one is like, you're doing great, like good job, keep moving. And so I was curious with that sort
That
of,
seems highly relevant because, like, a lot of times I work with kids a lot, and a lot of people in education are like convinced that, being all positive all the time is like the key. Like, don't tell kids what not to do, tell them what to do. And like, don't yell at kids, and don't give a lot of discipline, or like don't give a lot of punishments rather, but give a lot of rewards. And there's this whole system in schools called PBIS, which I think is positive behavior incentive system. And it's based around this thing that like you try to do many more rewards than punishments. And like, I guess it's based on research similar to yours that supposedly shows that this is a more effective way to get kids to behave the way you want them to. But I'm curious,
yeah,
did you have significant findings in your experiment?
I did not. I didn't have significant results that were in line that corroborated with previous research.
Well, did you get
In
any
the
significant result, or was it just like a null
I
result?
I did, but it wasn't what I expected. It was like, I actually don't know. It was some sort of nuanced significant result that would be like specific to the experiment. It's like,
Right.
oh, like they scored better than, I don't even remember honestly, but
Gotcha.
it wasn't in a way I thought,
It didn't confirm your
and
hypothesis, or it didn't support your hypothesis. Yeah.
it didn't. It didn't, and that may speak to sort of the integrity of the experiment, or me being a first time researcher. I wasn't exactly shooting for publication, so
Right.
uh,
But I mean, it's
well, that
interesting when
was
you
the
don't.
idea.
Right. It's interesting when you don't get a significant result. I mean, it could be that you didn't have a large enough sample size, right? If you had five
Yeah, it was
conditions, you need like 200 participants or something to get enough power.
right. Right, that's what I was shooting for. Like it was around that number, and I think I only got to about 20 per group.
Yeah. So
Small
that
school.
could have been underpowered.
Yeah,
But then there's also a thing of like, maybe the task wasn't sensitive enough. Maybe you could have picked a different task and gotten a significant result. But
possibly the hypothesis was verbal working memory. That was sort of that's how it was terminology.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
sort of
How many
speech
words you
and
can
language,
remember?
and yeah, and just sort of your tapping into your sort of,
Yeah.
yeah, your English.
What if you
And
did like a number span, like a digit span test, where you have to like
right, yeah,
remember
that
strings of random numbers? That's a commonly used measure of working memory.
totally.
But I feel like that
And
sort of research, obviously, it can be really useful, right? Because like I just said, like education professors, like people who design curriculums and like consultants for schools, use that sort of research all the time. Unfortunately, though, this is my own personal opinion, is that a lot of the research that is like drawn upon now is actually poorly done research, and like just not really valid. And I think that's actually pretty dangerous if you're using like invalid results to like make policy.
sure,
Uh,
and one of the biggest criticisms of a lot of psychological research is, there's a certain term for it, but I can't remember it, but it's basically that a lot of the participants are like middle to upper class, like white college students.
yeah,
And that's like a huge problem, is that like
right.
a lot of research findings and like confirmations about certain theories are like based on a very specific, like not very specific, but the most populous
Right.
sort of demographic that is available.
Right. So
A
they
lot of
don't
that is unknown.
generalize to
So
like all populations and stuff. Right.
yeah, and so like, but they will sort of speak to it in a way that it applies to everyone of all cultures and all nations. But it's kind of like, no, this might just be like an American college student kind of thing.
Right.
So
Yeah, and a lot of the
um,
studies are done at like elite schools too, like Harvard. And so like, I've heard that comment,
sure,
right? That like the Harvard student is going to be very different from like a community college student also. So
sure,
yeah, a lot of those findings might not generalize. I feel like this this is a little bit off topic from your career, but I find psych research very interesting to talk about. And
totally. And you know, it's funny, like as I was kind of digging into kind of the past research and like sort of things that related to my experiment, I was led down a lot to education type research,
mhm,
like what would actually be applied in classrooms and like what
yeah,
teachers and schools were using to try and enhance learning. Like that's actually
mhm,
kind of where I found myself as well. So
yeah.
that was pretty interesting.
I actually
Um,
there's one study that I used in my thesis because I was studying if meditating can. I actually told you just before we started this that me and Adam Quick used to meditate before races to try to like calm our nerves. And so my hypothesis was that meditating could improve your attention. And so obviously the tricky part with that is like what do they call it? Operationalizing attention. So like how do you measure attention? Luckily, like there is a task that was already invented called the attention network test, which we just basically found in the literature and then programmed it on our computers. But I did find a study where they had people meditate like before an exam in a class. So they would like literally before college students took a quiz, they would go in and give them like a cue card or an index card face down, and then they'd say, okay, everybody look at your index card, and half of them would say like just sit with your eyes closed for 5 minutes and just like relax, and the other one would like say sit for with your eyes closed for 5 minutes and pay attention to your breathing and like how your body feels. And it was like basically simple instructions for like
mhm.
mindfulness. And the people who did the mindfulness, like the mindfulness group, actually did significantly better on the quiz than the other group, which I thought was like
Cool.
really cool. And they replicated it too. They did it like 3 times and found it. So
Cool. Yeah,
yeah,
it's there's actually quite a bit of research on like the positive effects of meditation on cognition and sort of like behavioral type things.
yeah,
Um,
like social emotional learning and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah, meditation is continually sort of touted as kind of the, you know, kind of a wonder type of behavior. And
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of research that supports it. I mean, I just think a lot of people don't, you know, this is also off topic, but I think a lot of people sort of misunderstand meditation and
mm,
kind of think of it as something that is either too difficult or can't, they're just not the type of person to get into it, or maybe they're just kind of fearful of it.
yeah. I can
So,
see that. Well, anyway,
you know, like, yeah, a little off topic, but
well,
yeah, happy.
why don't we move on to what how you got into your career after graduating?
Sure, sure. So, like I said, I was going to school with the intention of going to graduate school for industrial organizational psychology.
Hmm.
And I was kind of chasing dollar signs. I was not the most particularly interested in the field, but I just kind of thought it was kind of interesting, and I didn't really know what else was really out there in terms of psych. Um, so that was my plan the whole time. My junior year, I took an IO psychology course. Like there
Hmm.
actually was a course at Keene, and I took it and I hated it. It
Yeah.
was basically HR.
Hmm.
It was very HR focused, and it seemed like it was very far away from sort of the experimental research side of psychology that I liked a lot. And it was just a lot of like bureaucracy, and it was
Right.
a lot of just like corporate type
That
culture. And I was
sucks.
like, you know, to be expected in IO psychology, but I just was very disappointed with it. So I still took my GREs that summer, which was difficult. Probably definitely one of the hardest things I've ever done.
Dude,
And
the GRE is a beast of an exam.
it really
It's like
is.
it's a 4 hour exam, I think, and you get like 2 water breaks, and they like pat you down, not pat, they make you empty your
Literally,
pockets.
yeah, they
Prison.
like strip search you and
Yeah.
make sure you're not like bringing in a like a spark note
You have to use
or something.
their pencils.
Yeah, like I'm
And,
gonna like
and
open mine.
I think you have to like ask for a tissue too if your nose is running. Like
Pretty wild.
it's a beast. It's so crazy. But anyway,
Yeah, it's run by ETS, who is sort of this like shadowy company. But
yeah.
yeah, so I took my GREs, and then my senior year, I was the first half, the first semester, I was kind of going back and forth on what I wanted to do. And at this point, I was kind of like I said, I was like the dude at Keene State. I was like Mr. Psychology there,
Hmm.
and I was very close with a lot of teachers. I was doing work with teachers, and I had a really negative experience where one of my teachers like wrote me this email like berating me, which by the way,
Wow.
like I was constantly told this uh in academia, higher academia, they're like, oh, if you want to go to graduate school for psychology, like you should expect that like you're going to be treated like shit. Like you're going to
Why?
be treated like subhuman. There was apparently like there's kind of this thing in like I guess maybe it's just psychology, but like in certain higher ed PhD programs, like there's a lot of like kind of hazing and like bullying that goes on.
That's
And like
crazy.
it's like, and I even experienced that during my senior thesis. Like I picked three professors that I was like pretty close with, and they like got in the room with me and they were like picking my picking apart my thesis like in a way that they were like stoked. Like they were
Yeah.
like, yes, we finally get to like shit on you. And it was just like, this is fucking weird. Like what is this like? It's honestly
It's like a
it feels like
Nietzschean like will to power. They like feel so so powerless in their day-to-day interactions that they just want to like literally be passive aggressive on any chance they
yes,
get. Yeah.
totally. It definitely it came from me to me. Like first of all, I'm like what am I like? I'm not 13 years old. I'm not doing this anymore. Like I'm a grown man. Like I'm not gonna go. That's really what turned me off of doing that type of program, whether it was true or not. I was like, I am not about to go to some school and have like some snobby ivory tower type elitist
Hmm.
folks sit here and like shit on me for trying. Like,
Yeah.
please.
And then
So
like once you get your PhD, you have to do a postdoc too. And like I've heard people describe that as like essentially doing bitch work. It's like
yeah,
imagine you go to school, you got to do 5 years. So you do 12 years of or 13 years of like K through 12, and then 4 years of college, and then 5 years of a PhD, and then you're doing bitch
and
work.
then post that.
And
Yeah,
it's like,
right.
what?
It's like,
Are you kidding me?
yeah, and just this sort of like fraternity sorority type culture that like that was around it. I had that type of experience with one of my professors where she like sort of digged at me in almost kind of like a personal, very unprofessional type way. And that was literally
Wow.
the moment I was like, I'm definitely not going into higher ed. And really
Hmm.
it wasn't just that. The real reason was I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I just sort of IO psychology I was turned off of. I didn't want to go into clinical, so I was just like, I don't going into experimental or like a
I mean, what
cognitive.
about just like doing a PhD in some discipline of psychology, like educational psychology or,
I,
motivational psychology?
I thought about that. I was like, that's really interesting, but like I didn't really know. Like it would you like when you enter into that program, like you're going to be doing this very
Hmm.
heavily for 4 years, for 4 to 5 years, and it's like you
Yeah.
better be at least very interested in this particular topic or field if you're going to go into it. And maybe I was, but it's like, A, you also have to get in. B, there might
Yeah.
be additional loans that you have to take out. And I didn't want to do that because I was already paying out the ass for
Right.
Keene. And I was just like, I don't even feel confident enough in it. So I was like, I'm gonna enter the workforce. So that was my plan. I was like, I'm just gonna start working. So
Good for you.
that experience happened. So my senior year, I went to a job fair and I was walking around and there were like tables set up of like companies local to Keene that were hiring. And there was one company there and they had a trifold like setup,
Poster board.
poster setup. And yeah, and there was it was a marketing internship position, and in the picture for the position they had like a rap music video, and it was like the goofiest, like silliest shit I ever saw, and I was like, I want to work here. Like this is where I want to work. Like
Yeah.
this looks like a perfect fit. So I kept going back to that table. I met 3 different people at that table, and I was like,
Mhm.
I'm not from business. I don't come from management or anything like that, but like I'm so interested in this position. It's XYZ.
Yeah.
So I interviewed for that position and I eventually got it. I convinced them that psychology and marketing had ties together, as
Mhm.
I was just particularly very interested in behavior, and I was interested in the mind. And also I'm 20 years old. I live online. Like I can sort
Yeah.
of finagle and see like what could be marketable or what is attractive about being online and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I got the position, which was awesome. So I got the internship, and that became my full-time job for 3 years after I graduated.
And so the position
So
was,
it was a digital marketing specialist.
which is
And
doing like search engine
so what that means is
optimization.
digital, yes, and everything else that encompasses digital marketing. So SEO is this function of digital marketing. Digital marketing would be the umbrella term. And then
Yeah.
within that, there's SEO. And you'd also have like SEM, which is search engine marketing, which is like pay-per-click type stuff, advertising. You'd also have display marketing. You also have, I don't know, what's another example? Um,
Sex
I don't know.
sells.
Yes, sales, editorial type
Boner
work,
pills.
boner pills, content marketing, things like that. So SEO is just one function of this umbrella term of digital marketing. And
Is
digital
this
marketing essentially means anything that's online. So it
this is
includes
probably something that you
website.
could study in college, right? You probably are degrees offered in digital marketing, or at least like
Probably
classes in business schools, right?
totally, yeah, totally at this point. I'm sure any like MBA program worth their salt is probably heavily focused on digital marketing at this
You
point,
ever think about
you
teaching this
know.
at a college level?
So teaching marketing,
Teaching digital marketing at a college level?
I haven't. I mean, I've thought about teaching, but not
Just an idea,
digital
man.
marketing, which we can get into.
Can you
Um,
can you yeah, you should think about it. But can you talk more about how you finessed your way into this job that was not really what you studied in college? I feel like
sure,
that's a good thing for people to know.
not totally. I mean, I basically was relentless. I kept going back to them because they were hesitant. It wasn't like I was a shoe in and they were like, "Oh yeah, totally." I
Mm-hmm.
continually was asking them like, what can I do? Like, what is this position about? What is it? And just trying to prove,
Mm-hmm.
taking what I had learned and the skills I had on my resume, so to speak, from my psych degree, and translating that into what this job entailed. I mean, that's going to be true for any job, and that's going to be true
Right.
for any company to company or one profession to another. Like you're always going to want to take whatever relatable skills you can and
Mm-hmm.
market it in a
Right.
way that is going to make sense to your future.
I
So
I think your persist or the interest that you showed in the job has probably made a big impact on them though, right? So like if
totally.
you can show an employer that like you're really especially interested in this job, it's not just another job
Drop in
for
the
you,
bucket.
then I think that
Mhm.
goes a long way. And also interesting that it was at a career fair, so you got to actually see them in person for the first time. A lot of people apply for a job online and
True.
it's like to them it's just a resume, it's just another application, but it's a lot
Mhm.
harder to say no to somebody who's like right there in front of you. And you know, how did you like dress for that day?
I dress pretty professionally. I did a white dress down shirt with a tie and
Tucked
like
or untucked?
slacks. I mean, that's the way to go if you're gonna go to like tucked. Oh
Jacket
yeah.
or no
Like I
jacket?
mean, you can't go untucked. No jacket. I did not own a jacket at that time. Pretty
So would you have worn a jacket
that
if you had
would
one?
be maybe that's a little overkill. I mean, it's like you also have to like know your environment. This is Keene, New Hampshire. Like this
True.
isn't really. I mean, like I'm not in the most corporate of places, I suppose, but
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like you gotta, I remember seeing students there that would show up like literally in jeans or whatever, and it's just like you don't look good, dude. Like you look like you're
Yeah.
not you're not trying your hardest. Like you're
I'll
just
bet
kind of
if it was like Silicon Valley though, the standard would be like an untucked button down
sure.
shirt with the top button undone.
Totally, yeah. If you're wearing like a short sleeve shirt, like something like that, totally, like rock that and like wear that in a way that's gonna be like, yeah. I mean, you gotta know your environment. Like you
Or
gotta
a
know.
nice colorful alpaca wool sweater, which anybody watching this video sees. Yes, this is real
100%
alpaca wool from Peru.
clean.
Clean.
Talk your talk.
No, I mean also like this is an interesting thing about fashion, I think, is like it's about how you wear what you wear if you own it and have confidence.
That's right.
So that's another thing, right? How you present yourself, like with your micro expressions and your emotion. If you appear confident, friendly, polite, all that goes a long way too, right?
Oh yeah.
In
Oh
an
yeah.
interview.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, if you are there acting as if this job is perfect for you. I mean, I've heard many success stories of people that are just like they go into the interview and they're like, I am perfect for this job, and they get the job because
Mm,
they're just like, if you believe it in your heart, if you're just like, I want to work here, like you were saying, like the relentless, like I was like, I want to work here, like I want to
yeah.
help you. Companies will see that, like they're just like, this kid wants to be here, like
Yeah.
why would
And
you
it
know what I
makes
mean?
sense
Like
from an employer's perspective too, right? You want somebody like in the long run, work ethic is is more valuable than talent, right?
sure, oh yeah,
In the short run, talent might get things done, but in the long run, it's like this is the lesson of Naruto. So I'll save you like from watching 1,000 episodes of anime to learn this
thank you.
episode, which is yeah. In the long run, it's the people who work hardest that are the most successful, not the talented people.
Dude, and that's such a, that trope has been, you know, that's beaten into us, at some point,
It
like
is, but
work hard,
it's
versus
also where we're brought up in a society where like with grades and stuff from a young age, where kids who are talented from a young age, I think, and tend to get by easily in school, like
sure,
versus kids who don't. It's like we often that teaches us to think that like talent is static, because how can I say? I think in school it's often hard for kids to catch up if they're already behind. So like if you're like already kind of at the near the bottom of the class, it's like you have to work so much harder to be in the middle of the class next year. So if
sure,
just something to keep in mind, and like that's coming from me, me who was always at the top of the class in school and felt like school was very easy. I've seen in a lot of my peers as we become adults, like it doesn't really matter, or it doesn't matter as much as you think, like how you did in school. It matters like how hard you keep grinding, like after, and what you make, what you decide to do after. So
totally, and just moving in the direction of your interests. I mean,
mm-hmm.
because that's going to kind of just have a natural like, this is what I want to do this. Like if you care about something, that's ultimately going to be so much more important than just doing something that like, oh, I'm kind of good at it. Like I can get by with it.
Right,
You know,
your passion. So you
yeah.
were so passionate about digital marketing. That's how you got this job, right? You just felt like it was your calling.
I mean,
Or you just
no.
pretended.
I mean, I was interested. It seemed far more interesting than like other salesy type positions that were
Sure.
there. I mean, there were definitely companies that were interested in me because like I was like coming from psych. They're like, oh, you'd be a perfect, like you'd be
Mm.
great for sales. Like you could get into sales, which is, a brother to marketing in a way.
Yeah.
And I saw the position and I just really saw the culture that was at this company. I was like, this looks laid back.
Mm.
This looks more up my alley. Um, so that was kind of what drew me to it. They have this like video team that made this rap video, and they make pressure sensitive labels. It's literally a manufacturing company that makes pressure sensitive labels, and they made a rap video. I was like, dude, sign me up. Like, where do I sign?
What's a pressure sensitive label?
It's literally a lot of people could call them like stickers, but a label is something that like carries information on it. So like
Okay.
if you flip over like a laptop, you'll see labels on it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like that's a pressure sensitive label. So a pressure sensitive just means it has to have pressure applied to be applied to the surface. So
Gotcha.
there's an adhesive, there's a top coat, and then there's printing on the label itself.
So
It
that's the
crosses over.
company you worked for?
Yeah, it was a company called Electronic Imaging Materials in Keene, New Hampshire. Great place, great
And
people.
how many people in your department, in the marketing department?
3. And it's a small, it was like literally 30 full-time employees. So like it
Yeah.
was me, another woman, and another guy. And
Okay,
like there would
so
be interns that would come through and
yeah.
sort of help with certain things.
So how did you go about learning how to do this job?
Totally. So it was all like just on the spot. So that's where I got into digital marketing. So I started managing their website
Mm-hmm.
and everything that they were doing as a function of digital. So emails, I was helping with. I was helping with the business development side. I was
Mm-hmm.
helping with, just the content that was on the website, how the content looked, how the website looked, how it functioned,
So they had
redesigning.
a website already.
Had a website already.
Did you know how to design websites at that point, or did you have to like learn that?
Had no idea. And I also like it wasn't like I was learning. I didn't have to do like hard coding. Every
Right.
website usually exists on some type of CMS platform.
What's
So it's
that?
like Drupal or Web or WordPress or
What's
like
what's CMS? Content managing
uh
service?
exactly. Yeah, system. I think it's content management.
What about Squarespace? Do you know about
That,
that?
that's a very similar one. There's a lot of these like very kind of like entry
Right.
accessible type of CMSs that are very popular right now, like Squarespace.
I've only used WordPress because like I've started a couple blogs, which I kind of keep them private because they're not very good content. But it's like I know WordPress. It's
Put
kind
it
of just
out,
like
man.
you have some
Show the
boxes. Well,
world.
I have to touch it up. I actually just made everything private the other day because I was like, I kind of want to put this on my resume, but I don't want companies to see all of this personal shit. So I
Sure,
limited
yeah.
it. I limited it to like some of the more professional looking. But anyway, I like WordPress at least. It's like you just kind of it's almost like a MySpace, right? Where you have like boxes where you can put like a picture here and like paragraph here. Is that
Yeah.
like what most of these are like, or are some of the
A lot of
more
them are
like
more,
some of the paid ones allow more customizability?
yeah, it's a lot more like robust and you're dealing with a lot more like integration into other platforms. So like
Mm,
it's kind of it can actually be harder. It's not so like kind of the term is WYSIWYG, which is an acronym for what you see is what you get. A lot of
mm,
like Squarespace type CMSs are like that. Like they're just like, here's what you want on the page. This is how we're going to do it. Those tend to be pretty limited in terms of like having like things that are automated or things that are like retargeted towards certain like demos and stuff like that. Like
sure.
that's more difficult.
So a lot of
Uh,
those websites would probably look very generic, right? They
Probably, yeah,
look like a bunch of other websites that use the same template.
exactly. Yep,
But
they have like
you,
very similar themes.
but you were using something different, right? So you got a more like custom looking website.
When I started, I was using Drupal, and then we
Okay.
moved to WordPress.
Oh,
And
but like the premium one.
yeah, yeah, and we were also working with a web development team that basically like did hard. They would do hard web design for us that was outside the realm of kind of just like a regular marketer. So I wasn't responsible for any type of actual implementation of like changing the
Mm,
like I was changing the website. I was managing the website itself and all the ideas and how things should be and whatnot. But when it came to like, I want a page that automatically pulls in reviews and lists it in a particular way. Like I'd have to go to the development team and be like, can you do this?
mm.
So, but everything else like writing the content, making images, things like that, like making videos, that was my bag.
So yeah,
Uh,
you were involved. You were the expert of what is good advertising, right? What's good
yeah,
marketing?
everything with the website. And so a lot of people found out about the business when they Google uh, barcode labels.
Yeah,
They would find our website, and that's due to good SEO.
gotcha.
So I didn't know any of this. I didn't know any
Yeah,
of this when I entered the job. And I hope if anyone is listening, like if you see a job that seems a little bit outside of your experience and you're fearful of it, like you should still go for it because you can learn it on the position. And like everyone learns something on the position. No one walks into any
sure.
job exactly everything they have to do. It's
I
not
think
how
the trick though is just convincing the company like to hire you when you don't know how to do it yet. Because we see so many memes about, they
yeah,
want
yeah,
5 years of experience for an entry level job, right? But it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
if you can somehow convince the company that they don't really need that, what they need is somebody who can learn it, you
True.
know. I don't
That's
know. I'm actually in the job application process right now myself, so I'm thinking about like there's actually a job that I really am interested in a charter school in New Haven, and I really like the model of the school, so I'm thinking I should reach out to them personally instead of just filling out the generic online application to like express why I'm interested and why I think I'm actually a really good fit for the job.
100%.
Yeah.
That's a great idea because like I think people think of companies and like HR departments as kind of just these like kind of shadowy thing. Like they're
It's
literally
like it's
people.
like a troll that just is like you can't pass until they block
Yeah,
you.
and it's like, oh, I'm just throwing my. It's like, no, literally, these are people
Yeah.
that are looking at stuff. Like you can contact them and you can get in touch with them. Like you don't have to go through the same funnel everyone else is. Like if you want to try to get in contact with the job, if you really want it, like go on LinkedIn, find out who works there, see if you can get, you know what I mean? Like you can do certain things to try to like
Yeah.
fang your way
Try to
in.
try to make it personal, right? I think that's maybe one
Sure,
of the
sure.
best advices is like make them see you as a person and not just a resume.
Totally.
Yeah.
100%. So like, yeah, you reaching out specifically to the charter school and being like, hey, like I'm really interested in like getting right into the face of
Hmm.
people in a different way. Like they're going to notice that,
Yeah.
and you're not going to be just another drop in the bucket
Hmm.
of another resume. Um,
But anyway, I digress a bit. We want to talk more about the nuts and bolts of like your job. So, um, what is something that would surprise people about digital marketing or SEO?
um, that's a good question. Surprise. I think. Ooh, that's a good one. What would surprise people about digital marketing or SEO? Probably. Oh, can I get back to that? Because that's a good one. Because I
Well,
think there's probably something there.
you've
I just
mentioned
can't think of it
to me
right now.
before that like SEO is not as complicated as a lot of people think.
Okay, that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I think people think I'm like, okay, so can I just say real quick, like where my career went and like where I'm at now? I
Of
think that
course.
probably.
Yeah.
So I did that job for 3 years. I was a digital marketing expert. I learned
Yeah.
everything about kind of all the different types of facets of digital marketing. From that job, I wanted to move to New York City.
Mm-hmm.
I liked SEO the most out of
Mm-hmm.
what I did. I thought I was the most like I can get a job in that. So those were the types of jobs that I look for when I moved to New York. And I got that. I became an SEO analyst at an agency.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I was promoted. I became like an SEO supervisor and I became like the top SEO dude at
Mm-hmm.
that company. And then I took that experience and moved to an in-house position doing SEO again. So now I'm specific. All I do is SEO. I don't do any other type of digital marketing at this point.
So in
Um,
your previous job, you were doing SAO, what, as like a contractor? People would like pay your company and you would do SEO for various. What's the difference
correct.
between your last job and your current job?
Good question. The last job was an agency, so it was like a hotel agency. So hotels would
Yeah.
go to this company, look, sign contracts, be like, I want 4 hours of SEO work on my website a month. And
Got
so
it.
I would be assigned to a certain company. Whereas an in-house position is I literally work for one company and I do SEO in that company. Generally speaking,
Do you care to share what the company is or should you not?
yeah, sure, it's Entercom. And like my main website is radio.com. That's like that umbrella. It's like 250 stations
Got it.
underneath that domain, like radio stations around the country. And so they all fall under radio.com. Our main
And
competitors are like iHeartRadio,
yeah.
um, tunein.com, stuff like that.
Didn't you know radio's dead, Lolly?
That's well, that's the thing is like radio is declining.
Yeah.
So the company is like, we need to go digital and we
Yeah.
need to find a way to get with the time. So that's kind of part of the integration that I'm on.
I
So
actually
what was
have
the
like
original?
an app on my web browser, I think, that is for radio. I don't know if it's from iHeartRadio or what, but it's
Mhm.
yeah, there's like an app that lets worldwide radio, it's called. Do you know what that is?
I actually don't. I'm not familiar with that.
I don't know how
Uh,
I got it. I downloaded it for Firefox. I think it was because of WPKN, which is a college station from the University of Bridgeport. And
Oh,
it's
okay.
like it's a good like independent radio station. And it was like I went to their website and they wanted me to download this plugin, I think, for the browser.
Yeah, a lot of radio companies they have apps now, and you could
Yeah.
just like you sign in the app and then you just pick your station and listen through that
I think there's
radio.
still kind of a market for it though, like to have like hand-picked content and also like talk radio, obviously.
Totally.
Like podcasts, people listen to podcasts, like whatever. But
Oh yeah. So that's yeah. I don't think radio will ever totally die.
yeah,
But like you said, like that's how our company is sort of answering that is they're going, now we have podcasts, now we have
right,
on-demand programming. Like you
right.
can
So
just
going
kind of
more
pick whatever.
digital.
Yeah. So like that's where they're going, like the direction that we're heading in.
So you do SEO for like, so people when they Google radio, radio.com is like the first hit. Should I
Yep.
test this?
If you Google radio, radio.com should be first.
So on Google,
This also
radio.com
isn't
is the
my
first
work.
hit.
This
No?
this like I inherited this basically.
What about on Yahoo? Do you think it'll come up on Yahoo?
Should.
Let's see. On Yahoo, Yahoo sucks. So I never use the Yahoo search engine. Like for some reason, it was the default on my Google Chrome for a while. Yep, it's the first hit on Yahoo and then Bing. But yeah, for some reason on Yahoo, I would never get like what I wanted. Can you explain why that's the case?
So you would search things on Bing and Yahoo, and you wouldn't get what you wanted.
Yeah,
What?
like a lot of times
Can I
I
have an
want
example?
like I don't know, like on Yahoo. Let me give you an example. Let me do this real
Yeah,
time. I
I
go to
need.
yahoo.com and I search up pulmonary embolism because if I want to learn something medical. Oh no, this one works. I don't know. I just have a lot of memories of like the top few hits on Yahoo would be very irrelevant to like what I wanted. I guess a lot of times I like Wikipedia, and on Google it's nice that Wikipedia is almost always one of the top
Yeah,
hits.
it comes up a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and searching. I mean, I kind of know what you're talking about. And Yahoo and Bing have sort of caught up quite a bit. Like, I think it's better now. I think all three of them are kind of like viable.
Yeah.
Google is by far and away the leader. So real quick, I want to go back. The question you had was what was something about digital marketing SEO? Yeah, people that are unfamiliar with SEO and sort of that arena think that sometimes like SEO people are like wizards and like they like flip a switch and all of a sudden like your content or your website is now going to rank highly in Google and like now it's going, which is obviously not the case. Like you're working with this $1 trillion platform that you're trying to play into and play nice with to try to rank well for. So I think a lot of people just also have no idea what an SEO person does, which I'm happy to really like dive into. But
sure,
yeah, I think it's a lot of people think it's like just kind of like quick fixes and things like that. It's like, oh, if you just like put keywords in a certain spot or words in a certain spot that like you're going to rank for that, which is partially true, but a lot of it comes down to your website design. A lot of it comes down to your domain authority, which is a term that is like how many other reputable domains on the internet are pointing to your website and like link to your website. So Wikipedia is like,
give an example of that.
So if radio.com, so if New York Times ran an article that linked to an interview that we had on radio.com, that's huge. That's huge for SEO because that signals to Google, New York Times is pointing to this website. So this website must be pretty good. This website must have some reputation to it. So it's sort of this bulk aggregate that determines like how reputable a site is. And if a site has like spammy things or sort of like questionable links and sort of like sketchy practices going on, the authority will go down. And it's really just like it's like a credit score essentially.
So who determines that? Is it like does Google determine that and Yahoo determines it separately?
Correct. Yeah, each search engine sort of, no one truly knows the formula behind how Google is truly picking, but SEOers have built tools like outside third-party tools to try to measure a domain's authority,
Mm.
and they'll analyze a website and see, here's the links going into it, here's the links going out, here's the traffic that it generally gets, here's our best guess at what the domain authority is.
Do you think all this, like how search engines work and how people do SEO and stuff, do you think it's kind of democratizing the internet? You know,
I
does that
know
make sense? Like the
yeah, I do it.
internet, it's supposed to be a place where everybody has a voice, but obviously, you know, people with authority have a louder voice, and people who can pay SEO specialists have a louder voice. So
100%.
what do you think?
100%. Yeah, it's the same problem that I think maybe a lot of pitfalls of capitalism has, is that,
Sure.
the big fish are just going to get bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And that's 100% true. And that's a criticism that Google has come under fire for, is a lack of parity in results, having a political bias,
Right.
not showing more edgelord, conspiratorial type content in favor.
Not showing enough edging.
Yeah, not showing enough edging, shame, and having more content that is like PC. Google has come under fire for that previously. So
Is safe search automatically turned on now? I remember this was a
it
thing
is.
back in like middle school. Kids would try to like,
It should
let's
be.
turn off safe search on the school computer and see what we can get if we type in boobs or something.
Yeah, titties, and then like, oh shit. Like, when you're 12,
Yeah.
that's big time.
Yeah,
That's
that's like
that's what your eyes are looking
peak of
for.
rebellion. Um, but
So
I wonder if democracy is just too idealistic though, because obviously if you think of a perfectly democratized internet where it's like everybody has the same voice, that's just like never going to happen, right? There's obviously going to be
yeah, you're
some
always
individuals that have more followers and are more popular than others just because they're, I don't know, more charismatic or whatever.
sure. And yeah, and Google is pretty, it's really sophisticated at this point. Like, it really does filter up results that are going to answer your question or your
Mm,
query. It acts in a way as if you have an intent. And what is your intent behind the search? And that's really what Google is working off of. It's not like people don't go to search anymore and they type Brooklyn, New York. Uh, I don't know. I can't even think of a good example, but it's like, rather than typing out like kind of just like keywords related to it, people will
right.
search, what are pizza places in Brooklyn?
Right, a
What are the
question.
best pizza places in Brooklyn? And that actually changed
Yeah,
heavily with voice search as well, with Siri
right.
and like Alexa, where it's
Or
like,
hey Google.
exactly, it's like, hey Google, what are the best pizza places in Greenpoint?
Right.
So like that's what it's going to be now, and
That's
that's what it
true.
is moving
I
forward.
literally remember, so we actually had computer class in my elementary school, and like it was a lot of typing, but I literally remember the computer teacher telling us like, okay, here's how you do a search engine. Like you have to type in the keywords, and her saying like you can't just type in a question. Like you have to do
Yeah, totally.
keywords, and like here's like you can do the not, which you can still do, I think. I don't remember how though. If you like particularly don't want a certain word in your
Yeah, yeah,
search.
yeah. You
But like
can.
now it's so easy. You do questions. So how do you, because I mean, I do a lot of online tutoring, and like, yes, I just noticed the kids, they always just put a question. It's like, if they want to know an answer, they just ask the question to Google. And
Mhm.
usually just,
It's
well, the
pretty
lazy
good.
ones just take the first hit though. This is the thing though,
Yeah,
is they'll
they
just
take the
take,
quick answer result.
they're very credulous. They'll just take whatever comes up first on Google as the gospel without even checking like what website it's coming from.
Right, totally. And you know what? There's a feedback button on those results too, because some of them are wrong and some of
Mm-hmm.
them are just not exactly what you're looking for.
Right.
And yeah, like you can't. Not all answers to questions are just a paragraph. Like, it's
So
you have to
does
dive
God
into it.
exist? What if
Yeah,
you
right. I
Google?
mean,
If
yeah,
I
just
Google,
like
does God exist?
I you'll probably get you'll probably get some type of.
I get doesgodexist.org.
There you go.
And there's
Yeah,
also a Forbes article, Can Science Prove the Existence of God? So I feel, Lolly,
so
you're uniquely situated with your psychological and SEO background to answer that eternal boomer criticism.
of what?
Is Google making young people stupider?
No, I don't think so. I think it's an extremely powerful tool that you can like. I mean, it's double sided, right? Like, I think it's ultimately helpful. I mean,
Mhm.
like it fact checks things. You can literally just you have I literally have purportedly all the information on the planet here in my
Right.
pocket. Like I can
Right.
go and search for anything. So I don't know how anyone could be like, I mean, I get it. Like the and this is something I looked at like during my research and like one of my professors made a note about is like, are students getting to this point where like everything is all just like visual learning and they're just like they're not even really deeply processing anything anymore because they're
Right.
just like they search it up. And to some extent that is a problem, that is true. And it sort of asks, it begs the question, what truly does need to be deeply processed and what
Right.
can just be something that we can always just reference.
Right.
So
I remember Mr. Coszo, our high school chemistry teacher, saying, I never memorize something that I can look up." Because he's
yeah,
talking about the periodic table of elements, and we were like, "Don't you have this memorized?" And he said, "I never memorize something I can just look up." But
totally. And
I
sometimes that it does get to a point where it's ridiculous, but like, yeah, that's
yeah,
true. Like
I
why
think
would it?
you don't want to ever outsource true like all your knowledge. Like obviously, there's some things you want to
Yeah,
know, but one the extreme example would be like phone numbers, right? Like how many of our friend and family's phone numbers do we know now versus when we were
right.
kids and had to actually memorize people's phone numbers, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
that's a good measure of like how long you've known somebody. Like if you know somebody's phone number, most likely you've known them
Yeah,
since you
yeah,
were
yeah.
kids, right?
Right.
But
Yeah, I only
I don't
know a
know.
few.
So that's, boomers. Boomers love to feel self-righteous by calling millennials stupid. So I feel like they just lash on anything. Like they're like, "Oh, millennials, they just Google everything. They don't even know any information anymore." But I just
Yeah,
wanted your
and
take on it.
no, I mean there's some truth to that. I think, but I think ultimately like it's like, you know, yeah, now we have this reference sort of, but the thing that comes under fire and that more skeptical people will ask is like, what are these results really? Google is in charge of these results. Are these
Right.
truly what should be poised, or is this,
Right.
kind of the PC answer to this? So
Right. And like is there are we heading toward like a dystopian future where search engine companies control what information is out there? Like have you read those novels like 1984 or
yeah,
Fahrenheit 451?
yeah,
Well, I
or
know you read The Giver. You gave me a copy of The Giver. It's another great dystopian. People love dystopias, man. But like in Fahrenheit 451, books are illegal. So like people don't know stuff because all the information, they still know how to read, but it's like pretty much all the available literature is controlled by the government. And so that's another
right,
boomer criticism, right? Is that if things aren't in print, then either
yeah,
governments or
it can be
corporations can
altered and
control.
changed. Hmm.
But I think that's pretty far fetched at this point. Personally, though, I don't see us getting anywhere close to that because there's still so much print, and I don't really see much. I don't see much censorship on search engines personally.
Yeah, the censorship that I think is most problematic is that it filters up a lot of recency. It has a very strong recency
Mm,
bias. So if
yeah,
you were to search for something, you're going to it's going to be a lot of the most recent results of
actually,
2020,
there's a
2019.
really good example of that from this year, which is that when I was trying to do some research on coronavirus and like how it works and what we know about it, like scientifically, or like how it spreads, what it does to the body, what it is on a molecular level. It's hard to find that information with a search engine because the first two pages are just news articles about COVID.
Yeah,
And it's
totally.
like, I mean, I understand news about COVID is important, but it like made it hard to find anything else about it.
Yeah, yeah, it's becoming increasingly, and that's a criticism that search engines are having now. Is is there information that's just sort of falling by the wayside and being buried, like the information that is actually critical, to what you're looking for. Google is still good at determining intent, but there are these still sort of
Mm,
types of searches. That's a good example. Like I'm trying to learn information, more biological, scientific type stuff, but I'm getting all these like articles about the vaccine
So
distribution.
could you maybe do a search where you eliminate news? Could you do like minus news in your search? Would that work maybe?
Not easily, no. Just
Yeah.
because what you can do and what maybe a lot of people don't know, and this is probably like the most useful tool or like way I can teach people about Google, is that if you can search by a particular domain, you can search by a particular website, which I don't think a lot of people know. And like a
Oh,
lot of, so an example that I always use is Reddit. Reddit
yeah.
has like a really like crappy search function in the
Gotcha.
site. Like I don't like, I think it's a pretty bad search function. I don't think a lot of people think so. But what you can do, like whenever I want to like search something like on Reddit, you can do site, SITE colon, and
Hmm.
then the domain. So reddit.com, all like one
Hmm.
thing, and then space, and then what you want to search.
Got
So if
it.
I
So you're
do
searching
site,
on that site particular, on that
exactly. So
domain, yeah.
it only filters, it's filtering out, it's only Reddit results. And that's probably the most useful if you want to search something that is exactly how it's said, rather than like
Mm.
saying like chocolate cake. I want specifically chocolate cake, like in those words. You could put parentheses around them. That creates a phrase search. So
Mm.
that's like the best way to like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Um, those are probably the two most helpful I can
You
think
know what's
of.
funny? I just got a notification from YouTube from Stanford. It says contemplative practices for prevention and treatment of traumatic stress in youth. I wonder if that's based on the conversation we were just having, that it
They're
like
listening.
recommended that, or if it's probably based on like previous searches I've done. But
Yeah, totally. And so many of the searches you do are based on previous searches as well as your location. I
yeah,
get a lot of, if I search for something, it's going to be hyper localized to Brooklyn and New York and
yeah,
all
yeah,
that.
yeah. I love the
Um,
classic like you do a search for something and then like literally the next website you go to you see ads for that thing.
yeah, yeah.
So fast.
That's all display targeting. Yeah, that's all like, oh, you've been to this website, you may be interested in this. That's all
Well,
marketing. That's marketers.
but I want to get back, and do you know how long we've been doing? We've hit a little bit over an hour, right?
Probably. Yeah. I don't
Um,
know how long.
I want to get back into kind of your career particularly though. So how enjoyable do you find your work, and
Okay,
what's like a typical work day kind of like?
this is where things might flip a little, and like it may be a little more. Yeah, I don't like what I do. I would say
Hmm.
that 100%. Like this is not a particularly. Oh, how can I want to like say this very carefully because I don't want to make it sound like I hate it or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So like as you know, I work in SEO. I work
Hmm.
in digital marketing. Um, and I've worked in SEO now at 3 different organizations, 2 different
Hmm.
places. Like I'm relatively familiar with the field.
Hmm.
Um, I don't. I get frustrated with it because SEO is a lot of, it's a lot of speculation,
Mm.
and it's a lot of like best practices,
Okay.
and it's also like I'm doing things to websites in hopes of Google liking,
Hmm.
and I'm not necessarily like a programmer or a
Hmm.
developer that is taking one thing, changing it, and literally seeing on their next screen, this is how it's going to look.
Got
Like
it.
it's not black and white change.
It's more
So
of an
that's
art than a science.
totally. And there's like, there's artistic elements to it, which people like. It's a nice blend of art and science where it's like,
Hmm.
there's hard rules, and then there's things where it's like, you sort of have more flexibility with how you want to do it and your style.
Hmm.
But it's frustrating because it's like, you never really truly have 100% ownership about your results.
Hmm.
And that's kind of a frustrating feeling. It lets you get away with things on the positive side because you can always
Right.
just be like, oh, Google is just,
Right. They
I don't
can't
know,
really
we'll figure it
blame
out.
you if if they're not at the top of the search.
Right, because you're the best guy for the job. They
Right.
want they're just like, well, hope you get it, Adam. You know,
So
so
it's like there's not a lot of competition in this field. Not a lot of people do it.
it's a very niche
Yeah.
job, and so it's an. I will say
Good
this to anyone that is interested in it.
good job security, right?
It's an excellent job. It really is. Like there's great job security. It's it's difficult to find good SEO
Yeah.
people that are like also very communicative
Yeah.
and can speak well to what they're doing. A
Yeah.
lot of people in SEO fall into the position from other positions or just are in marketing in general. It
Hmm.
like in the digital marketing space I was in, it was a lot of kids just like me. They did digital marketing previously for like a small mom and pop type shop,
Yeah.
move to a city, and they go, oh, well, I know how to do SEM or SEO. So they start doing it for this company.
Hmm.
Or there's also just kids like straight out of college that they have marketing degrees or whatever, and they just learn on the spot.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how to get into it, I would say. Like,
Hmm.
you know, maybe trying to find a marketing position for a local
Yeah.
type of job, or just doing marketing yourself for your own interest and then pitching that.
Can you
Or
market my podcast, Lolly?
I could, and I actually I want to post it on just my Instagram. I mean, come on now. It's all about exposure, baby.
Yeah, dude. Build my personal brand. And then I
Yeah,
can start I can start selling my armpit sweat to people.
that's right. You're like the Belle Delphine of podcasting.
I don't know who that
I'm pretty
is,
sure
but
it's like number one, like Joe Rogan, and then it's number two is this podcast, right? I'm
yeah.
pretty sure that when I checked the iTunes rankings, I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
And then third was like Last Door on the Left. Yeah,
Oh my
man.
god.
This is you think it's big for you. It's big for me and my brand. So
But you didn't really answer my question that much, which was how much do you like your job? And then I also wanted to hear about like your workflow and like how you kind of go about your business on a day to day. But anyway, first talk about like pros and cons. You talked about one con, which is that
so
you don't
that
see concrete results, so you don't feel like
yes.
a huge sense of accomplishment. Is that fair?
Yes, that's a good way to put it. You're a very behind the scenes person, and at this point, a lot of true SEO really comes down to how fast your website is, how secure your website is.
Mm.
And those are two things that SEO do not.
You
That's
can't
all web.
control. Yeah.
That's all your programmers. Like that's their job and the product team or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the content on the website, like the design,
Right.
how it's actually set up, the user functionality. I mean, those are some things like now you kind of get more into SEO territory, but again, like these are kind of things that are very broadly defined and like other people have their hands
Mm-hmm.
into.
And also
So
factors that are out external to anything digital, right? Word of mouth, just like what people are, what happens to be trending at that time, right? Like here are certain companies, like for instance, the coffin dancer guys that just like went super viral. You know, the coffin dancers in
yeah, yeah,
Uganda just went
yeah,
super viral when coronavirus hit because it just became like such a huge meme. And now they're
yeah,
like, their website probably sees like a ton of traffic, whereas before it was so. Just
yeah,
an
totally.
example to me of like an externality that like no SEO person can control, but that obviously has a huge impact on like their Google rank, whatever.
Totally. So a huge example of that, like that's a perfect example. I used to work at this hotel called the Hay Adams Hotel, which is in DC, right across the street from the White House.
Mm-hmm.
And they saw a huge spike in their organic traffic and just general traffic overall because they were mentioned in
Yeah.
this really popular book called The Fire and Fury that
I've
was
heard that
written
book.
by. And it was all about it was this journalist that had White House credentials, and like every day he would just stay at the Hay Adams and then walk over
Mm.
into the White House and like watch Trump do what he does, and he
Yeah.
would just like write about it. And
Yeah.
so that hotel became very trendy, and
Mm-hmm.
like it was mentioned in a lot of articles and whatnot that became very popular,
Yeah.
and so it gained a lot of credibility through that.
And just luck, basically, as luck would have it.
I mean,
Okay.
yeah, essentially. So
So
so that
another pro you talked about was that it's got good job security, it pays well.
dude, it's an
What else is
excellent.
good about it?
It's I mean, depending on the organization, you'll probably generally have a lot of autonomy. You'll probably,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you are the expert. You are generally the expert, and so a lot of times, what I've found is that people are not going to question you. You are the expert on what SEO is, so you can 100% get away with quite a bit of bullshitting and just saying what you think or like blaming it on other things and just sort of like saying, oh, there was a Google update a few weeks ago. Shout out to my employer if they ever see this. But yeah, like
Nah. They will never see this.
right? So, like, those are certain things that you can do as an SEO, and any programmer will tell you that as well. Like any developer would be like, yeah,
Yeah.
you can bullshit clients.
Do
Agencies
you
do this all the time.
do
They
you work on a
bullshit
team?
clients. I do. I work with two other people. So I have
And
a supervisor above me and then someone that's parallel to me.
do you communicate with them a lot?
Oh yeah. Yeah, like we're like a core team.
So do you
Um
is it like you'll be collaborating on the same project at the same time or different things?
yeah, we'll mostly collaborate on the same things. My supervisor will kind of tell me like, hey, I need help with this. So like, can you help me on this? Or just like, okay, you go off and do this and I'm gonna work on more technical stuff.
So yeah, at
Uh,
least you're accountable to your supervisor and like he understands, he probably can tell if you're bullshitting.
Daniel,
Oh,
20.
yeah, I shouldn't have assumed that was a
No,
male. For
but
some reason, because of the field, I
mhm.
just heuristically assumed it was a guy.
And you're canceled. This whole podcast is I'm gonna see you in people.com, People magazine. Yeah, I think yeah, there's I do have someone that I am accountable to.
Yeah,
Shoot, just as much of a bullshit artist as the next person, dude.
sure.
I mean, like that's how it is. So
Hmm.
um those are, I mean, again, like, but again, like, I'd say a pro too is that you work with a lot of different teams. I work with the development
Yeah.
team. I also work with writers. I also work with management. I also work with the business sales and team. So that's cool.
Do you feel
I
like
think
you get enough socializing at work, or do you feel like you crave more? Because this is something I think about a lot, that I think more people, and especially like employers, I think just more everybody should think more about like fulfilling our social needs, because I
yeah,
really think that that is a real thing, that as humans we do have like a need for socialization, and I think certain jobs kind of deprive us of that and others don't. So how do you feel your social needs are or aren't met at your job?
they're honestly not that well. That's probably one of the more bigger complaints I have. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, at the end of the day, I am working generally in just Google spreadsheets and doing things in front of the screen that is
Yeah.
more solo. If you're better at your job, if you are a really good employee, you are communicating a lot and you're speaking and getting ideas from other team members and whatnot. So that's something I could be better at.
Well, I think a
But
lot of jobs are probably like that though, especially
right,
nowadays. I think so many jobs are done mostly just on the computer. Is
totally,
is that a fidget spinner?
it is.
Nice. I have a little bottle of medicine here to fidget with. I also have, I think fidgets are actually can be good on interviews. I also have a little like very smooth rock that can be nice
Nice,
to like rub it. Soothing rock.
nice.
Yeah.
Rubbing it on stream, very smooth, Daniel. Yeah, I
What
fidget a lot.
what's another con of SEO work of your job?
Um, it's a lot of very, probably another huge con to it is that it's a lot of repetitive and
Mm,
menial work that may or may not be impactful. So a lot of it is digging into the dirt of in the nitty gritty of very specific projects or little things that
mm-hmm.
you optimize about a site, and it can become very, very repetitive and boring. I
Yeah.
mean, like mindless type stuff. So
Excel,
that
man,
is,
the king of monotony.
oh yeah, yeah, Excel, Google Sheets, a lot of that, and a lot
you ever
of
you ever see that meme of like, it's like a billion years ago an animal decided to crawl onto land, and
and
now 9 hours of Excel a day until you die?
pretty much.
I
I
mean, it's
mean,
obviously an exaggeration. Nobody does 9 hours of Excel a day. I hope not. God, I hope not.
I mean, yeah, but so those are sort of the biggest cons I have about it. I would say is a lack of true ownership about what you do. I think that sort of wanes with the position and the job that you have. Um, and then the second would be just sort of repetitive kind of menial work. Another misconception I think about people have about SEO is that it's not that difficult to understand. Like
Mm.
it's more about knowledge and just sort of like
Yeah.
experience in the field. Like I can tell you things that it may take a few, like I have experience working on websites, so I kind of know what
Yeah.
to do and what not to do. But there's there's like it's not like difficult concepts. It's not something that like
Mm.
you need a particular IQ or processing power to do. Like I'm not teaching anyone, oh, you have to learn an entire library of JavaScript or
Yeah.
like anything like that. Like it's pretty straightforward stuff.
Hmm.
So
So can
that's
you give an
that's
example of like some, obviously we're not, you won't be able to explain it in full technical detail, but like some of the actual steps that you would take to optimize a search.
totally. So if you have a piece of content, let's say so I work in with the editorial team a lot and I work in media. Radio.com creates articles that are like pop culture articles all the time.
Hmm.
Kanye West and Kim Kardashian broke up. We're gonna write
Yeah,
about
they did.
Yeah, man.
Just kidding. I'm not that out of touch.
You had me fooled.
I'm pretty out of touch, but I'm not like, I feel like in the group chat you guys are always referencing shit and I have to like look up, literally look up what you're talking about.
Oh man, you know we're hip. I gotta be. If I live where I live, I have to be. I gotta be in tune with the kids. I gotta be in
Shout
tune
out.
with.
Shout out to Greenpoint.
Shout out to Greenpoint, man. But yeah, I think what were we talking about? No, yeah. So like Kim Kardashian and um,
What's his
Yeezus
name?
break up, Yeezus, and they break up. So I go to the editorial team and go, hey, this is trending. This is a
Hmm.
topic like these two people in search are trending right now. You should write an article about it. So the
Oh,
editorial team write an article. And if they
interesting.
create that article, I can go and afterwards and like I tell them like, hey, make sure you reference Kim Kardashian and Kanye West in both the headlines. So make sure it's in the
Oh, because
editorial
like
headline.
you know that that's gonna come up.
Yeah,
People are gonna search that,
yeah,
and so you want to direct traffic to your website. That's ingenious. That's sneaky.
yeah, man. Yeah, you want to create articles of what people are searching for, and so then
Foot pics.
there's there's certain things about a website. There's a lot of like cleanup that goes on behind the scenes that a lot of
Mm.
people that just have no idea about. It's like deleting old pages that may get in the way of other search results that you
Yeah.
have, or cleaning up extraneous pages that just shouldn't exist anymore, cleaning up broken links that are on a site, cleaning
Mm.
up redirects, making sure that pages redirect to the right places.
Hmm.
Those are all SEO functions. Like those are all things that an SEO team will work on.
Do you have a favorite like old shitty broken website that you still visit from time to time? As like
Craigslist.
Craigslist looks like an old broken website. Like when I
Craigslist.
first went on Craigslist, I was like, how is this Craigslist? Like I was like,
It's
felt
true.
like it was a scam.
Yeah, Craig invented it. Some comedian, I stole this joke, but like someone invented it with like when the internet it was invented. Like that's basically what Craigslist looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah, Craigslist is. I found every apartment I've ever lived in off Craigslist. So um,
Any
yeah.
others though? I mean, like Craigslist at least works, but like, is there any like site you visit? I don't
Oh,
know.
like that's like basically broken.
Yeah, like hasn't been updated in 10 years, sort of thing.
Ooh, that's a good one. Um, Eric Andre's site is insane, but that works. Um,
Good shout out.
I I can't think of any like broken ones. Wayback Machine is really fun. That's a good website.
Doesn't
Uh,
that just take snapshots of all the websites? So
yeah,
like you can find what, don't people use that to find like stuff that people deleted? And it's like, but you like actually did post it.
yeah, totally. And you know what? SEOers will actually use it too to find where old links existed, like old URLs that exist, and
Yeah.
they'll like create redirects on their domain back to their like the current one. So there could be like links that are out there like floating in the internet that are literally like they just 404 or like it's a server error where they lead to nowhere, and they'll add a redirect to their domain, be like, nah, like send it back to our homepage.
Oh,
Like that's
is that why like the other day I typed in like something dot CMO instead of .com, and it automatically redirects to .com, or no? Is that just like
Oh,
a Flutter
possibly.
feature?
Yeah. Domains can buy other domains and redirect.
Gotcha.
So like I'm pretty sure that if you Google like what's a good example? I don't know. If you Google
Feet
like
pics.
feet pics, it's gonna redirect you to Belle Delphines. I don't know why I keep referencing her.
Who is Belle Delphine? I don't know.
Oh man, you just gotta Google her. No, she was like a really famous sort of like Twitch gamer streamer that became very popular because she sold her bath water and she sold it for like 15 grand or something like that, and someone bought it.
Jesus
That
Christ.
was like that was all time simping, all time simp, like simp Hall of Fame is
Simping
like
all over the world.
Belle Delphine is part of that. So yeah, she's back now and like she does that whole thing. Shout out to her. She's a good marketer.
Word. Well, Lolly, this has been a stimulating conversation. I feel like maybe we could have gotten some more details of the actual work, but we kind of have to wrap it up. What do you want to say
Yeah.
with like in closing? Is there stuff that like you wanted to talk about that you didn't get a chance to yet?
Um, I guess maybe more just about like what SEO really is, but like we kind of just covered that. I think we did a pretty good job. It seemed a little rough. If someone was following this, God bless them. But I think we that's just how podcasting goes. It's so tangential and all over
Yeah,
the
thanks
place.
for the high compliment, Lolly. I thought I
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
good host.
I know how podcasting goes. I'm in the game, baby. I'm a white guy. I've done podcasts. So yeah, I mean, I think in terms of SEO, you know, it's a kind of a marriage of light technical work and somewhat technical work and like some like artistic style. Like you do have to like write advertisements and you write meta type like the search results that you see in Google, someone wrote those or they created an automation that writes those based on what someone else is wrote or they're pulling from the site. Like
Hmm.
those are things that an SEO will do. So you do have to be able to write to your audience as well as kind of do the background technical type work. So that's
Hmm.
how it's kind of a tough job to hire for because
Hmm.
finding someone that is good at both of those can be challenging, as well as
Yeah,
like a good managerial type person that can manage everything.
that's interesting.
Uh,
Do you miss like it seems like your first job digital marketing was broader? Do you miss some of the other stuff now that you like specialize in SEO?
Not really. I should say like yeah. I just think personally like on a very deep level, it just feels like you're a cog in a machine, if I'm being dead honest. And it just feels like you're just part of corporate, like you're part of the corporate life where you're just, you could feel very small.
I feel like you can also though choose to not see it that way. Like that's the thing about perspective is like it's kind of like how you choose to see your work, because you can think of it as an
Sure,
important
sure.
an important job, like you said. I mean, you yourself said it's a good job, right? So you can look at the positives, the fact that it provides you with a comfortable life, or
Hmm.
the fact that like you're not really doing any harm in your job, which a lot of jobs you can't say that, right?
Correct.
So I think
To
you
some
know
degree.
the way that we find fulfillment in our job to an extent is up to us. I think this is something, I don't know, this is how I've come to think now. I used to think about like a lot of jobs as just like you said, cog in a machine and like not fulfilling, not meaningful jobs. But I think in realistically, a lot of it is like how we choose to perceive it.
Right. And I think you're always, no matter what you do in life, you're going to have to deal with these sort of like kind of small-ish feeling of, you can't change. Not everyone can change the world, and no one changes the world alone. So you
Or
do
should
need
you
to,
even want to change the world?
yeah. So it's just about like what you want to do. I mean, for me, like there is a part of me that was like, man, maybe I should have became a clinical psychologist. Like maybe I do want to be a teacher, and like I feel like I can reach people and like actually help communities and people more than just being
Hmm.
like someone that is literally I help a corporation make more money.
That's
And
true.
like but you like, if you believe in the ethos of the corporation and you believe that like this company is a good company, which I do believe, then
But
it
you do
can be
present, you provide, well, what service do you provide to people, right? You provide people
right.
music to listen to or
Entertainment.
podcasts, other entertainment. Yeah.
Yeah, I provide them article, poppy articles to read. Sometimes information articles that can be like actually good, like why didn't I get my stimulus check,
Mm-hmm.
or just like an article like that, or like what is Biden's $1 trillion stimulus plan include? That's
Right.
an article that like I could pitch to the editorial team, and
Mm-hmm.
that's cool. Like it's cool. Like I could actually like enter in the realm on this huge level, like a high scale level,
Mm-hmm.
and and say like we should write about this and like actually like have people read
Mm-hmm.
it
Even other
supposedly.
jobs, though, like you mentioned, teaching. I've thought a lot about, is teaching actually like a good profession? How much are you helping kids versus hurting them? Because people say teaching, you're giving them useless information. You're teaching them to be submissive. Rather, you're stifling creativity. You're not giving them actually tools that could be useful for a job. Like your job, you don't use that much of the stuff that you studied in school, right? Then the other side of the coin is, well, education isn't just about work. There's a lot of things that it's like important to know outside of work, understanding history, like understanding how to think about stuff, how to read well, how to do math. That's all important life skills, right? Or like knowing science, knowing basic facts about the world. And some of it's just like enjoyable, right? So like teaching, some of it's just really fun and enjoyable to learn stuff and to think about stuff, right? So that's in the
Hmm.
teaching example. You can look at it, the positives or the negatives, and then some stuff it's unclear whether it's positive or negative. And I think that applies to almost any career, really. I feel like I
Yeah.
can't really think of any career, at least right now, that would be like 100% good for the world all the time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, unless you're like an EMT, like, I mean,
Sure, I guess, yeah, EMT, but then I guess also like, is that the most important thing? Is service the most important criteria in picking a job, or is there also other aspects of like just comfort or like how much you enjoy what you're doing for its own
yeah.
sake?
Right. Right. So I will say in closing, SEO, while not the most emotionally rewarding or intelligently rewarding position, it is a very comfortable and a very easy job. It really is.
Mm,
I mean, I think it depends on the expectations of your company and whatnot, but it can be the things about it that are difficult are kind of not cognitively demanding. It's just like, oh God, like today I have to do 3 hours of like this boring thing that I
just
don't
the
really
the
want to think
grind,
about.
just the grind,
Yeah,
right?
there's a fair amount of grind, and that is a part of, but that's just going to be a part of
Part of
jobs,
almost any job I can imagine. This grind,
right?
yeah,
But also a lot of this is personal to me, so like it may be a great fit for someone else, but you know,
yeah.
yeah, I'm kind of at my own crossroads with it. Yeah, I want to say I hate it. Like I'm very grateful for the position that I'm in, but
Yeah.
it could definitely be better. I wish I was kind of doing something more, that I was honing a craft, doing something that I
Yeah.
was interested in, that sort of thing.
Can you see yourself transitioning to something else in the near future? And what would that be?
If I could, I've thought about this a ton, and if I could, it would either be a more sales type position where I was more speaking with clients directly and
Mm-hmm.
pitching. I do love like presentations and talking and whatnot. And there's also the other side to it, which would be more technical, and that's going into like data analytics and data science. That
Mm.
would be, I think, to me, more intellectually rewarding, because
Mm.
like, and it's just harder. Like it's just like you're learning
Right.
and you're doing way more.
Uh,
Um,
so one
yeah, those are
thing,
kind of like the two things I balance.
one trend with so far, I think most of my guests have been either in graduate school or so I did. Sam who's doing PhD, Mike who's done his PhD, Rob who's in medical school, Slater's thinking about graduate school. I guess Kayla only has a bachelor's. But my crowd tends to be a pretty educated crowd because I went to private high school and a good college. So is graduate school something that you consider, or are you happy? Like, do you think you want to go to graduate school, and if so, for what?
I think I would love going to graduate school. Like I would absolutely love it. And if I
Yeah.
did actually go in, my third career kind of path is counseling. Actually, funny enough, like I've thought about that quite a bit. But I think I would love that environment and that type of thing. But I just
Mm-hmm.
don't think I would ever do it now purely due to
Financial
financial
reasons.
reasons
Yeah.
and just sort of the time dedication that it takes. And also, if I were to go into something such as data analytics, it wouldn't necessarily be like graduate school. It would be like
Yeah.
courses
A
over
boot camp.
exactly, and or it
Mm-hmm.
would be like a certification from a particular specialty school or something like that.
Yeah,
So not
like you can learn to
necessarily,
code online for free. I've seen plenty of opportunities to like learn coding and stuff.
and a lot of it is it's project based. I mean,
Yeah.
figure out a project you want to do and just try to do it. I mean, that's the best way to learn.
Well, I just got an idea for
Not
a
that I,
project, which is to help you find free graduate school for clinical psych. Right,
oh,
Ellie?
hit me up, man. I mean, the city college here in New York is probably the most affordable option that I know
True that. That's a good
because
one.
it's just public. What's your cat's name?
Ellie. Ellie
Ellie.
with the messed up eye.
Yeah, she is. She is giving a look right now. She's
Jesus.
just like,
What?
I believe when a cat like has their eyes sort of down, they're pretty relaxed, right?
I don't know. I think she was just sleeping, so I just woke her up.
Mhm.
But Lolly, thanks
It's
so
like
much for
wrap it up.
joining today.
Thank you
Yeah,
very
we
much, man.
should
Appreciate
try
it,
to
dude.
keep it about an hour and a half, so we'll end it here. Any questions, hit us up with your feedback,
DM
comment,
me.
DM us. All right. Peace.
Love you, Dan. Peace, dude.